right, here's another place where I think Sallie is kind of flashing us a bit of her FI, her tertiary FI. And that is when she's talking about, and again, I won't go into this too much because I already did in the interview itself, like why I think that was such a very INTJ-ish thing for her. When she's talking about that idea for a book she has, based on also stuff she's tried and experimented with in her actual psychotherapy practice, of wanting to write a book. This is so great. Trying to about how to help people manage their weekends, get the most out of their weekends. And God, some things I didn't mention in that interview that I also think are so INTJ-ish about that, like just delightfully so, and of course usefully so, is just again, like what a concept, like that's a thing that I can't say enough about, and that I've seen just so much of with the INTJs I know, is how they come out with completely novel, like you couldn't, even I, with my big dominant intuitive function, like couldn't see coming, the kinds of problems that they will, not just the kinds of solution, the innovative nature of the, combined with, rock solid efficacy and pragmatism of the solutions they come up with for problems that they apply themselves to, but also just the figuring of the problems in the first place, or like the identification of the problems. I mean, they see problems where most people don't even see the problem, let alone see the solution, the best solution to it. And it's incredible, it's because they really do contribute to the world in such a way with their vision and the way they do identify these things, let alone how they go about making them better. So I thought that was great. I mean, how many times have you heard of someone going around saying, you know what, here's something people really need, I think, is they need to know what to do with themselves on the weekend in their free time. And yeah. So I think also I also would say that she's flashing a bit of her tertiary, probably been developing for a while, even more than before, becoming a little more obvious in its sort of her preoccupation with the use of that kind of cognitive function, is in that she speaks of how she would suggest, she has suggested to clients they use kind of a grid, and they make a very personalized grid. This is part of the efficacy of this technique that she's taught to her clients, is that it's a device. It's a terrific abstract device that is quite open-ended and manipulable, and that can be tailored and custom. The inputs can be customized, and even the thing itself is somewhat malleable so that it can accommodate to best advantage the priorities of the person who's trying to use it. And again, it's so NTJ, like that is so NTJ, just that is aspect of it is so NTJ, I think, typical. And she talks about how too that, everyone's grid's going to be different. And that what should go into it should have to do with what your priorities are. So that is to me, that's very veering into some really obviously FI territory, in that FI is very, very concerned with individualism, with deeply held values that are part of a complex systematic system of reckoning value. And to make such a grid and to ignore, as she says, like ignore what the outside world is telling you should do. Like just get rid of these received note. I mean, that's implicit, I think, in what she's talking, what she proposes in this. It's like, just get rid, because it's not helping. And again, her reasoning for it, it's not helping you. Like it's not working, right? And again, like with the NTJs, it's got to work. Like they're totally up for entertaining all kinds of interesting ideas in their free time, whatever, such as much of it as they may have, but which is probably not much because they allocate their resources, including time and energy, with like a great deal of, precision and discipline and focus. Yeah, I mean, to make such a thing, you have to sort of shrug off these shoulds, which are not helping you to think of. That's the point. and, from an INTJ's perspective, and to redraw the map. And what should go into that map should make sense to you. It should be useful to you. Because again, if, an INTJ would grasp this immediately, and this is what would separate them very much from an ISTJ, for example, is that, they're like, well, if you're not going to use it, like they certainly recognize from an early age, because they're so unusual in wherever they are on Earth, wherever they're born into, chances that they're surrounded by a family, they're also INTJs, and like a community that's also entirely or mostly composed of INTJs is like pretty small. So they're used to feeling different. They know they think differently from most people, and they've been aware of that for a long time, and da-da-da-da-da. But yeah, when they set about trying to help other people with their problems, solve their, whatever they are, they're very keenly aware of, like, it's got to work, and part of what is going to, an essential part that is, strangely, really, when you think about it, is often overlooked in project development, is it's not sufficient at all that something be like something that's going to work if you can't get the user to use it. Like that's the kind of thing that an NTJ is really not going to overlook, but that a lot of other types that might be excellent designers of some kind of plan of action or device or whatever, they might neglect to think about that. And here she is saying, like, yeah, like, you've got this great list, but stop, and she actually gets a little like, and I'm laughing because I know why she's doing that, I know how that drives them, NTJ's insane, or not insane, it doesn't, other people's shit doesn't get them down that much, but, it bugs them, like, again, they want it to work, So when they see people doing all these dumb things and they just keep working against themselves, and they keep, insisting on using methods that don't get them anywhere, the NTJs are like, they'd like to see you do it differently. And if they're going to help you, they really want it to work, because now they've invested some of their precious time and energy and attention and thinking power into it. So like, they really want it to work now. So she's like, stop making those lists that you just keep feeling, you just use as like, to beat yourself with later and get yourself down, and you still don't get anything done. Like, let's figure out what is going to help you get the stuff done that you want to get done. And this too, sorry, just a little side note, this is another beautiful thing that I have experienced firsthand with INTJs in my life, and that I've seen them in, this characteristic I'm about to speak of. This is something that they do, I've seen them do with other people too, or in projects. So again, like very abstract things, but also even more personal things, is, a lot of people go around the world feeling really, really intimidated by the INTJs that they know. They're freaked out by the, certainly not all the other NTs, that's for sure, but a lot of the people of the other types, they're worried, they might be worried, like, what are they thinking anyway? Because they have an incredibly impassive demeanor normally. And that combined with the sort of tendency to bluntness that most of them have, naturally. And then you combine that with their usually formidable intelligence, and like the book smart sort of sense of that. And then you combine that with the confidence that they have. A lot of people they have unwarranted worry that the INTJs, the stony-faced INTJ that's in their workplace or their family or whatever, their environment, is sitting there silently judging them for all of their failings, like everything they're not very effective with, like the INTJ is sitting there judging them about it. When nothing could be further from the truth, because number one, they don't care what you're doing. So like, that's the big one, is like they are so good at generally, they do develop skill in this. They're so good at figuring out what they need to do and what they want to do and what their plans are and how to do it. Like, they devote so much energy and concentration and effort to that. There's not that much left over to sit around wondering what you're doing, So that's the big one right there. They don't waste time on that kind of comparative stuff. Secondly, despite their very often very tidy and conventional appearance, they are wild upstairs. They're absolutely wild upstairs. And they would think they entertain the strangest of things. As I said in another video, that one, what I love about the creative thinking introvert types, I mean, they're so fun to talk with in my experience, because nothing is too much or too scary or too gross or too out there or too anything to discuss with them. And it's, oh God, what a romp then, you know, because I can say any weirdo thing at all, and without any preamble at all, and they are right there with me. Or if they're not right there with me, they will catch up fast, you know. So that's wonderful. Sorry, where was I going with this? All right, so another reason why they're not judging you, you know, like, because they don't care, you know. But also because they are very, very, very unconventional inside. You know, whatever they're doing on the outside, they're very unconventional in their thinking. So there's that. So you really don't need to worry about being too weird for them, you know, like that's not a concern. You need to be worried about not being competent enough. You need to be worried about not living up to what you said you would do, and on time, you know, and on time, and that kind of thing. That you need to worry about. But you don't need to worry about being a weirdo, because they're a weirdo too. Next, the other thing too is that they're very, and I have seen this, right? Like when I've seen, I'm thinking of my wonderful INTJ uncle with whom I get along amazingly, and I've seen him help people in the family with like doing financial planning stuff, for example. And he is really, you can tell from him talking about parts of these efforts to help, that he's not interested in like judging the person who needs this kind of help. It's just not even really on the radar. Like that's not the thing. They're not apt to be all moralizing and like, you know, how could you get yourself into this mess? How could you be so silly? Like, it's not that they don't think that. They're totally thinking you're an idiot. But you know, when you mess something up, you know, that could very well be part of it. But that's not their thing. Like that's an SJ thing primarily, you know, or maybe someone with heavy FI on the moral level of like, that was wrong, you know, and it bothers me. The INTJ has the FI in there and it is factoring in, but it's in the third position. So it doesn't weigh in nearly as much as the TE and the NI. So when they're helping you with the problem, they're not wasting their precious energy and focus on like coulda, woulda, shoulda stuff. They're just like, let's move ahead. Let's get this back on track. That's the focus. And yeah, they're not into moralizing. They're not into controlling you. They just want to be part of designing a system or a device that is going to work for its intended purpose and work at optimum level. That's the big driver and the big motivation. So there's Sallie with her, like helping her, you know, her bummed out clients, you know, stop having terrible, terrible Monday blues because they feel so bad about everything they didn't do on the weekend. She's like, let's reimagine this whole problem so that we can figure out a good system that works for you and that you will use. And they will adapt to other people's sensibilities that way and in effect respect them. But, you know, they don't need to like worry and think about on the personal level about who you are and like, did you do the right thing, or let's get you doing the right thing or whatever. No, they're just like, yeah. That's it. It's just, how do we get this to work? That's what they want to have happen. All right, several more little videos to come.